Welcome to another edition of the Giants Huddle podcast brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the New York Football Giants. I am John Schmeelk. We're joined now by an extended member of the Giants family. He was the head honcho over at SiriusXM Sports, ran the entire sports department. But for our conversation, former Giants radio producer, Steve Cohen from beautiful Florida, where you got a ceiling fan on. I got a blizzard outside my window. I am envying you right now, my friend.
Well, yeah, it's pretty though. I'm enjoying it far more from Florida than I am from your office. But yeah, I guess that's the big first snowstorm of the year for you guys. So hopefully the kids and folks will enjoy it. Hopefully people didn't have to commute today. Got a little break. And so just be careful, obviously. But yeah, it's nice to look at from here.
Hey, absolutely. My daughter built a snowman this morning. My wife is giving me an hour to do this with you now. We'll have a little bit of fun, and then we'll go sledding once everything is said and done. So it'll be a very busy day for me. I'll be like I had 2 full workouts by the time this day is over, which is great. The kids love it. And she's been, like you said, we've had snow for 2 years. She's been dying to go out there and do this. So
that's great. Enjoy it. It's fun.
I will. But let's talk some football first here, Steve. You said you were out there in Vegas. You've been out to Radio Row at the Super Bowl for years and years and years. How was this year similar? How was this year different being in Vegas for the first time?
Well, John, over the years, it's really developed from Radio Row to Media Row. I mean, you've got TV networks going live from Radio Row. You got streaming networks going live from Radio Row. People are doing podcasts. People are hosting radio shows. I thought they did a great job in Vegas, right? And like those of us, we sit there and we're like, oh my God, I can't believe that the Super Bowl is in Vegas, of all places, right?
Things change fast, man.
Yeah. I mean, the NFL as a whole, they didn't embrace fantasy football at first. I was like the first fantasy football writer for NFL.com. And then eventually they started to embrace that. And then I remember, 5 years ago, going out to the NFL for league meetings, and they were talking about gambling and how they were going to approach gambling moving forward. And then next thing you know, the Raiders are moving to Vegas, which, I'm a lifelong Raider fan. I thought it was the greatest thing ever because it was the first time the Raiders ever owned their stadium.
Yeah.
Right. Mark Davis made more money last year than the Raiders as a whole had made in their entire history. Think about that. Oakland, LA, rentals, facilities, not great. Now they have a state-of-the-art facility. They have a beautiful, beautiful stadium, and a wonderful place to host a Super Bowl. And it was funny because I'm not a gambler, and so I took the red eye back late in the week, and they have slot machines at the hotel at the airport, and I'm like, wow. I mean, I didn't even spend any money on gambling. Nothing. I'm not a gambler. But I do like to play the Wheel of Fortune slot machine every once in a while. So I lost $20 at the airport, and I'm like, all right, let me just go get out of here already. What are you doing? So,
and you checked the box on your Vegas gambling experience, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it just listen. The beauty of Vegas is just there's something for everyone, but the shows are amazing, right?
Yeah.
If you look at music acts and all those great things. It's amazing. And this week, the big show was U2 at the Sphere. And it's funny. I'm watching that and I'm looking at all these advertisements on the Sphere for the NFL. I'm saying to myself, who owns the Sphere? Oh, James Dolan. Oh, yeah, that's the guy that kept the stadium out of the west side of New York. That's the same guy, right? So now, he's making some money off the NFL, even though he cost them a stadium on the west side, him and the dirty politician Sheldon Silver, right? So there you go.
It's funny how it goes, man. All right, yeah, I was going to keep the radio and media stuff for the end, but why don't we do that first? Because we're already kind of on it. Now, Steve, for people that are in New York, they'll remember back in the earlier mid-90s, you were heard on FAN every Sunday morning, and your big thing was football injuries, and you created one of the first football injury websites. Now, for people that play fantasy football now, they probably can't even fathom how this had to work back then. First of all, it wasn't called fantasy football. It was called rotisserie football. You had to go and check the stats on Monday morning, right?
Yeah.
And you're doing these injuries, and it's 4 games, it's for gambling, but it's always also for early rotisserie football. just talk about what it was like back then trying to get injury information for teams and inactives and stuff when you couldn't just go online on the internet an hour and a half before the game and just get them on a Sunday.
Well, I think there's a couple things, right? You had to be able to have the access to get the information in terms of who's practicing, who's not practicing. NFL has made that a lot easier for the average fan to know what's going on now. And then, like, for instance, common sense. If a player doesn't practice fully at least one day, you're really taking a chance starting that guy. Not healthy enough to practice, yet healthy enough to play. I don't know. But back then, John, when I was at the Fan and I'd go on Frances's Sunday morning show, I do the injury stuff, and I was doing research for Mike back then. And then Mike did a TV show with Bill Parcells called Around the NFL, and Bill won his last championship, Super Bowl championship with the Giants. And so Mike got me on as the chief researcher for that TV show. And one of the big things they needed was injury information. So now I had to get it for them by Thursday because that's when they were taping the show.
Oh, wow.
So the process sped up and used all my resources in the league. And, up until that point, I had been producing for Jets radio for a long time. So I knew a lot of the PR people and made new acquaintances as we went along the way. And then, players and trainers and such. But, and writers, of course, like there was no internet to go on and gather that information. In fact, the first couple of years of the service, we were a fax service and a 900 number to call to get the information. My partner was Jay Glazer. And then we brought in Adam Kaplan. And it was a terrific service that when I go to Radio Row like I did this year, Dr. David Chow, who is the preeminent injury expert these days, former doctor with the Chargers, he always credits me for being the first to do it, and he's very kind about it. But with all that said, that's very important information. And by the way, a lot of teams subscribed to my service because they want to know what was going on because it was nice to be respected in that way where the teams would read about it and such. And then 2 years into it, the internet came to fruition. It was a lot cheaper for us to put it out via email and post it on our website. And it was a subscriber service, but it was great. It was great. I enjoyed it very much.
It's funny. You mentioned Jay Glazer, and for people that were in New York media, and it was before my time even, that saw how he kind of got started, in the 90s and early, late 90s, even early 2000s before he blew up. It's just a kind of a credit to him for, he's like getting rides home from people from the facility, from the Giants, covering the team. It's the amount of work he's put in to get to where he is, where now if Jay says it, everyone kind of knows it's legit. It's really just unbelievable. And it's one day someone should really do a movie about how Jay got to where he is, because it's really an unbelievable story.
Well, it really is. He interned with us at the Fan, was an overnight intern, Jody McDonald's show. And look, he was always good at what he did, and he was always a hard worker. And you're right. He got rides here, rides there. New York Post gave him a column. He did great things with that. But with Jay, it was all about relationships. I remember the first year he wanted me to go out to the combine with him. And that's where I really saw the relationships. I knew the relationships we had with the Giants and Strahan and the organization. But until you go out to Indianapolis with him and he takes you to a Hooters, okay? And you walk in the Hooters, and every top assistant coach in the NFL, they're in the Hooters, eating wings, drinking beers, and just socializing with each other and talking a lot of ball, right? Talking a lot of ball. And then you make relationships, and so many people in there, from the Sean Paytons to the Ryan brothers, just so many great assistant coaches, who would go on to become head coaches.
Yeah.
Were in that Hooters, and that really impressed me. And to have those relationships with the decision makers in the NFL really helps you, especially when you do what Jay continues to do.
Yeah, and as much as we see that he does know that he reports, the amount that he knows but he does not report, I mean, is astronomically larger, right? And that's why these guys can trust him, because they'll tell him things and they know he's not going to say it unless it's something that the person wants to be out there, which is, I think, why he gets the best information.
Yeah, and I tell you, it's like there's so many stories like that. Those of us who've been covering the league for a long time, in the media a long time, it's like, oh, why don't you write a book? Because I won't tell those
Yeah, you
stories.
don't want to burn people, of course.
No, I won't. I won't do them, but they're hilarious. They're fun. But it's just like, it is what it is. But yeah, no, some things are just uh, inside voice with all that and not to be spoken about, but to be learned from on every occasion.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of stories, you mentioned you were the Jets producer for a long time. Then when the Giants went to WFAN, you became the Giants producer and you got to work with a very young and peppy Bob Papa and Carl Banks and Dick Lynch back then as well, of course.
Yeah,
Dave
yeah.
Jennings was involved then too. What was it like kind of getting the games over at FAN and working with those guys as they really developed a style together before they kind of became the duo that they are today with Bob and Carl?
Well, Bob and Carl are terrific. So there was an overlap, right, where I was the executive producer of both the Jets and Giants radio at one point, right, for a year or two. And then we went full on with the Giants and didn't renew the Jets rights. But I mean, I worked with some great people. I got to work with Ian Eagle and be his first professional football radio producer.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So, and by the way, 2 weeks ago, AFC Championship game, synced up the SiriusXM app with Westwood One's broadcast featuring Ian Eagle, the McCourty brothers, and Ross Tucker, and synced it up to the TV so I didn't have to listen to Tony Romo, which is great for me. Okay. I didn't have 15 more minutes for Tony to make a mistake that I'd have to explain to my wife why he was wrong. That Franco Harris wasn't part of the Holy Roller play. In fact, it was two other Hall of Famers who were. Anyway, I digress. But it was great hearing Ian. The McCourty brothers were terrific, and I enjoyed it. So, with all that said, it's funny. I gave some advice to someone recently to pass along to Tom Brady. And I said, do yourself a favor and spend some time at the league office with the rules folks, with the experts on the rules. Because it's so important knowing the rules. Because if you don't know the rules, it's totally going to take you out of your flow as you try to find your way, because you're not really sure what you're talking about, right? So with that said, Dave Jennings was the best there ever was when it came to the rules, and he was a stickler for them. And I learned a lot from Dave, and I miss him terribly. When I got the chance to work with Dick Lynch, I really enjoyed that a lot. He was a special man.
Yeah.
He was a sweet man, special man, funny guy. And yeah, I really enjoyed my time with the Giants. I enjoyed my time with the Jets as well. Those were the years Leon Hess owned the team, right? And I liked the people in the building. I got to see before my very eyes how Bill Parcells changed the culture. And I learned from that. In my management career, it helped me later on seeing Bill change the culture of the Jets, going from the 1-15 coat tight years to Bill making them a playoff team. The Giants, they were a family from day one when I came in to work with the Giants. And I really enjoyed my time there. It was a great time. Went through a lot together. Jim Fossa was the head coach. Got to a Super Bowl against the Ravens. Helped lose it because of a terrible call that they had on Keith Hamilton in the game.
Yeah.
But but I really enjoyed it, and it was very classy, and something I'll never forget. And I became friendly with Chris Mara, and through that, I did New Jersey Gladiator Arena League football, which was a lot of fun. And Chris ran that team. I was a radio analyst, along with the great Spiro Ditas. And Bob Papa was the play-by-play guy for TV.
Yep. With Jason Garrett, right?
And Jesse Palmer.
Yeah.
Jason and Jesse would rotate in. So, give Chris credit. A lot of talent in the broadcast booth for the New Jersey Gladiators back in the day. But it was great, and just first class operation. And that's why, of course, the Giants won the 2 Super Bowls after I left. But I enjoyed seeing it. I was in the stands for both of those games, and I was very, very happy for the Mara family.
You love turf. You're good at it. So you start a turf biz. Business grows, your savings grow. Become the most celebrated name in turf. Are you ready for all that life brings?
Giants Huddle Podcast is brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the New York Giants. From game day to every day, Citizens is made ready for Giant fans with insights, guidance, and solutions. Learn more at citizensbank.com. And I got my start as part of the Giants family running the board. For the last year, you produced games for the Giants on the road. I have been yelled at by Steve Cohen over the phone for not working the network switcher properly as a young 22-year-old out of college. That definitely happened more than once over the course of that, I think, 2004 season, Steve. Was that the last year, right? Or was it 2003?
No, it was before Eli came in. It was the season before Eli, because I hosted that draft, my first hosting the draft for Sirius when Eli was drafted.
Okay, so that was 03.
And I hosted that draft with Phil Simms, which was amazing. But yeah, it was the 03 season. And it was pretty special. And I don't think I yelled. I think I was just very emphatic and passionate in my delivery of my words,
Dude, trust me, I've yelled at people far more than you probably have over that talk back. So don't worry about it.
Well, we had some great moments over the years in terms of, producing live radio. That's the thing about producing live radio. I remember one year we're doing the Jets post game, and Dave Jennings was always very nervous. He wanted me to throw to him. Parcells is coming. Parcells is coming. Parcells is coming. Okay,
Yeah.
Coming down, Dave. Come down. And then all of a sudden we throw to Dave. Here's Coach Parcells. As soon as he said, "Here's Coach Parcells," one of the engineers in the back at WFAN flipped the wrong switch. And the next thing you heard was from Clint Eastwood talking about sexuality in Hollywood. And I'm like, what? We're looking at each other. Of course, I think Carl was the engineer, Infantino.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what the hell is going on? That doesn't sound like Bill Parcells. And then they got it straightened out. I mean, could you imagine that? You're in the building. You've been working in the building now for over 5 hours, right? Between the pregame, the game, forget the prep. And all of a sudden, Clint Eastwood replaces Bill Parcells as the post-game press conference. But yeah, we had a great crew. Bob was great to work with, and there was some challenging times, Daniel Snyder had the great idea of putting us in a broadcast booth, not only with windows that didn't open up, but with the writers sitting right in front of us. So if Gary Myers decided to get up to get a cup of coffee, Bob couldn't see the field.
Oh, that's right. Because before they put us in the almost equally bad booth down the hall, which was still in the end zone, you guys were actually in the press box, right, in Washington?
Oh, yeah. It was like the isolation booth for the $64,000 question. Thanks, Dan Snyder. You've really done a lot for the game. Glad you're out of it.
Now, by the way, they've actually figured out a way to have worse booths than that. Like, I don't know, 2 years ago when they first did the renovation on the new Dolphin Stadium, they have you literally in the back of the end zone. The windows didn't open either. Oh. And you have to push your radio equipment through the nightclub to get to the radio booth. So, we're done. You know how this works. You're trying to get on the bus so they don't leave you behind. So we're trying to get out of there. And to get to the elevator, you have to, and the Dolphins beat the Giants that day. You had to push our 5 huge radio cases through an active nightclub People are dancing, they're grinding on each other. We're trying to push our radio cases through it. I'm telling you,
my gosh.
you should have seen the look on Chris Majkowski's face as he's pushing that gear through the room. I will never forget it. It's some of the stuff you have to do with the radio.
That's radio.
So much fun.
The one-legged stepchild in the ass kicking contest. Radio. Yeah, that was us.
Absolutely. How do you feel like the changing media landscape has affected how the NFL works? And this is kind of what I mean by it, right? You have all these, basically what ESPN now has done, they've taken sports radio, Steve, and put it on TV, right? That's all their shows, all these Stephen A. Smith shows and everything. It's just Mike and the Mad Dog with different people with cameras in front of them. That's all it is. It's the same show. So how much do you think the way people talk about sports now on TV and how nobody has any patience anymore, how is that affected in your opinion? And I think, by the way, you did a great job not turning Sirius XM NFL radio into that. It's not that, and it shouldn't be. How do you think that's impacted how the league works, ownership, patience, fan patience, things like that?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I think exorbitant rights fees for play-by-play hurt the talk product, right? So for me at Sirius, I was given a budget to spend on sports talk radio, but when you're paying a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars for league rights, which, by the way, is the most important thing you can provide to a sports fan is the game. So then it becomes, you want to be fiscally responsible. How much can you really spend on talk? Okay, well, they gave me a budget and I spent the budget wisely, but I was very honest with people and say, well, this is how much we can pay you, right? And you're willing to do it. You'll enjoy it. You'll have fun. And you'll be in touch with the fans, right? Because we enjoyed calls. And I think when I got to Sirius, by far, the smartest football fans ever. I mean, early in the day, it was truckers calling us. All these guys are doing is thinking about football as they're driving across the country. So, but it does hurt the overall sports talk. You look at ESPN, right? I love Stephen A. Smith. I love Pat McAfee. But after that, it's the same people I got to hear every day, 4, 5, 6 times a day, And it's only on Sunday that you get all these other guys and women. And during the week, it's like, listen, you know what? I love Ryan Clark. I don't need to hear him 5 times a day, right? I want to hear Tim Hasselbeck. I want to hear some other people. So, but that's what it became, is because how much are you going to spend on that programming, right? So it's a tough thing to do. However, the access has been great because now, if you're a smart consumer, you can find a lot of the people that you loved listening to and watching through streaming services, right? You could find them through their YouTube shows. You could find them through their podcasts. And so there are lots of ways to do it. There are these fast channels that you can get through the web and YouTube and all that are phenomenal. But you got to kind of do the work. Now, so the thing for us as programmers, and we've been programming a long time, is you got to understand this generation, the younger generation, right? The newest consumers just out of college, a few years out of college. These folks didn't grow up listening to radio. They grew up with whatever came out of this, simply put.
Yeah.
Streams. Okay. So if you want them, you got to fish where the fish are. Wow. Isn't it amazing that the Sunday Ticket, 1 year after going to a streaming service, had twice as many subscribers? Well, brilliant, right? Of course, because they fished where the fish were, simply put. So a lot of sports, they say about the NBA, just tune in for the last 2 minutes of the game. That's all you need to see. All right. Some people feel that way. Others are like, I just need to see the highlights to know what's going on. Okay. That's up to you. So every sports fan is kind of different, but the landscape has really, really changed. And so, the hard thing for me at Sirius was, as you're programming, and I did the tailgate show this year, which was a lot of fun. But I said to my co-host, Robert Turbin, I said, Turbo, I said, here's the thing. Most of these fans are tuning in to hear just about their team and their game.
Yeah.
So we need to do rapid fire, fast paced, 2 minutes on each game and whip through all these games with pertinent information and all that. And so we kind of changed the format to do that this year. And I think it worked really well over the course of the 3 hour show. But a lot has changed. I'm not going to say all for the better, right? I'm not going to say that because I got spoiled on ESPN's Monday Night Talent that they put up on before the game. Talent ain't there anymore. It's the same guys I'll see Monday through Friday that are there. You know, they're not flying Randy Moss in for Monday night anymore. I don't know why Alex Smith is only on a Sunday. One of the best people they have, but that's what you get. You get what you pay for, you know? And I'm not saying any of these other guys, you know, I think SVP is great. Swagoo is great. He worked for us. I'm not an RG3 fan. Okay. He called Jason Kelsey the best center in the history of the game the other day. What? You ever see Mike Webster, Dwight Stevenson, any number of other centers? Great all-time player, but please don't go there. Please. That's all I
look, no, Steve, I'm with you. And, you know, and then you mentioned podcasts, right? You know, the old thing that I've been being told for 10 years is that radio's dying, radio's dying. And yeah, maybe terrestrial radio isn't what it used to be, but all podcasts are is recorded radio that people can pick and choose what they want, right? And I think it's turned into a great avenue for, you know, people to be able to still do radio, except even if it's not on the actual radio. And it also gives a lot of these kids that are coming up in the industry, you know, when we were coming up, there was no YouTube or podcast where you could record stuff and put it on the internet and get reps. These guys now, you can just get reps and create your own thing. It's I think for the industry, podcasts have just been a really nice addition.
Podcasts are wonderful, okay? And you can do a lot of different things with podcasts. The best podcasts are the documentary style podcasts. You know, we won Best Sports Podcast of the Year 2 years in a row. One of those podcast series was 9/11 in sports 20 years later, which is very thoughtful, very well done. But documentaries are a heavy lift, and we were really proud of the work we did there. But other folks who were doing calling them podcasts, right? Going on, doing 45 minutes on sports, right? And see, as you know, sports talk is here today, outdated tomorrow. So you want to call that a podcast? You want to call that a one-day cast that's outdated a day later? I don't know. But I'll tell you what, it made it difficult for me to hire people because some of these podcast folks were just throwing stupid money at people. So now if I'm paying somebody any number of hundreds of dollars to come do a radio show of 3 hours and they can make more than that with a 1 hour podcast, well, how do you convince them otherwise? You know, I mean, other than saying more times than not, nobody's going to hear you unless it's marketed and promoted properly.
Correct.
Through social media and all these, you know, various avenues. So it made it more difficult for me to hire people, but the thing that we had over the podcast and continue to have is when people come to us, we'll make you a better broadcaster. We'll work with you, you know, we'll give you feedback. Nobody's giving you feedback for the most part in the podcast world. It's basically mic on. How do I sound? Great. Go. It's your feedback.
No, absolutely. I'm with you. Giant fans love a winner. It's why they love Citizens, named a 2022 best bank in the U.S. by The Banker as the official bank of the Giants and sponsor of the Huddle. Citizens is made ready for fans of Big Blue. Learn more at citizensbank.com. All right, Steve, let's talk some football. Chiefs win again. Patrick Mahomes again. Probably the best first 6 years of a career for a quarterback. Could be possibly in the history of the league. That doesn't mean he's the best quarterback in the history of the league, just that the start has been maybe the best. What are some of the lessons you took away, not just from the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl, but from this NFL season as teams like the Giants try to build the right way to become contenders on a consistent basis?
Well, look, as Kevin O'Connell and Brian Daboll found out that, people go to work on you in the off season, right? You can come in, have success, first year head coach, but now they're going to go to work on you to see what you did well, what you didn't do so well, and use that to game plan, right? They're both terrific coaches, by the way. terrific coaches. However, when it comes to the Giants, when it comes to the Vikings, it's all about the quarterback play. If you don't have a quarterback, you're not going very far, right? So, hey, John, 60 different quarterbacks started in the NFL this year. So everybody's going to sit there and say, oh, well, the Giants are going with Dave Brown. Well, that's not enough. You may love Dave Brown. You may think he's Dave Brown. Hello. Yeah.
See, all my talk about the 90s got in your head.
I'm just going to Duke right now. But Daniel Jones, Tommy Cutlets, the whole nine. That's kind of like a thing in my head. Like right away, I got to revert back to a Duke quarterback.
I love it.
Anyway, so I love Daniel. I was high on Daniel Jones coming into this past year, right? I don't know what happened. He reverted back to the other guy that maybe didn't want to start, right? But then you look around, you're like, geez, the offensive line is terrible, right? How is he supposed to do anything with that offensive line? He's getting the crap beat out of him, both when he ran the ball, passed the ball. So then you look at the Chiefs. Most of the season, they had the same 5 guys starting on that offensive line. That's important, right? Look at the Niners. Stability on the offensive line, right? Go to the defensive line for both teams. Stability. So I don't think I don't think a lot changes in terms of how important the battle of the trenches are, right? If you don't win, the line of scrimmage, you're not going to do very well. And it's key, right? So then you try to replenish it and add to it. And the smart teams do that as they, get deeper into the season. Niners bringing in the Chase Youngs of the world and all that. So it's very important. I think when you look at the Chiefs, you look at the last several years, how they built their defense through draft picks. That's something to go to work on. Because they hit on a lot of guys, right? They hit on a lot of guys, and these guys could all play. And so I think that's really important, and that never goes away. And salary cap will always be an issue. But that, those are the things that I learned this year in just kind of looking at how teams are built. What's important to some teams that aren't, that's not as important to other teams. And the different philosophies. Right. So like we could sit there as fans and you can scratch your head. Why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? Some teams just have different philosophies in terms of what they want to do. How do they want to get there? All right. So now we'll take a look at the Chiefs, right? Giants are talking about what they want in the draft this year. They want a quarterback. Do they want a wide receiver? They want an offensive tackle, right? Definitely need all 3, right? But who'd the Chiefs have at wide receiver this year? They won a Super Bowl. Who'd they have? A rookie, Rashee Rice, who was pretty good, huh? All right. Guy they took last year, Sky Moore, he hadn't peed a drop yet. Okay. Kind of missed on that guy. Don't know if he's ever going to be anything. And then you bring in guys, you got the Valdez Scantlings. And couple other guys, you look at McCole Hardman,
Justin Watson, right? Like,
you're not going to tell me any 3 of those guys are head and shoulders better than Darius Slayton, right? No, these are all veteran guys that you hope you can rely on, right?
Now, Travis Kelce helps that a little bit too, obviously.
Well, I got it, right? But the thought was Darren Waller was going to be your Kelce when you traded for him.
Yeah.
Right? Problem with Darren Waller is, like Bill Parcells used to call about frequently injured, he used to call frequently injured players Jaguars. Why? Because they were in the shop more than they were on the field. So is Darren a Jaguar? Or is he going to play for the Giants? I think regardless, you need to get yourself another tight end because you don't know what you're getting next year. You hope. I mean, when he's healthy, he's a terrific player. Terrific player. And I know that as a Raider fan. And he has been healthy most of his career. Gotta be honest with you. Guys don't get healthier as they get older. they start breaking down, you got to worry about them. You got to have backup plans. And I thought the Giants did a good job with some of the younger tight ends that they brought in too.
You're ready for a change. Payday comes early with Citizens, so go to that retreat. New You moves to the country. Now you're raising goats and launching a lifestyle brand. Are you ready for all that life brings?
Yeah, I think Daniel Bellinger's done a nice job for them.
Yep.
You know, you mentioned the quarterback spot because you're right. You know, for the fans that are old enough and people like me and you who covered it, you know, Andy Reid used to be the guy that couldn't get over the top, right? And he couldn't win the big game. He always was the bridesmaid, never the bride. And it's amazing when you get Patrick Mahomes, that tends to change. You know, and that's nothing against Donovan McNabb, who was an excellent player in Philadelphia, but he ain't Patrick Mahomes, right? It's funny how that changes. So as the Giants try to figure out this quarterback spot, you're right. They like Daniel Jones, 2 neck injuries and ACL. Joe Shane has said in his press conferences postseason, you need to add a quarterback here, at least one, who knows, maybe more. What do you think the best avenue here, Steve? Is it a veteran to kind of hold the fort down in case he's not healthy, to back him up, or do you want to get a developmental guy? Now, maybe not at 6 if the first 3 picks are quarterbacks like we're all thinking it's going to be, right? But how important is it, do you think, to add a developmental quarterback this year, whether it's in the 2nd round, 3rd round, or moving up in the back end to the 1st, something like that?
Well, so here's the question. Is DeVito your developmental quarterback?
Did he show enough this year? I'm not sure about that, to be honest.
Well, he's not a finished product.
Right.
He's a young kid, right? So, you know, give him a clipboard, let him watch what's going on, let him work out, let him, you know, see competition in practice. Let's see where he goes, because none of these guys come into the league a finished product, right? And people that I know who saw Tommy in college said, he's a much better player than the Tommy we saw at the 2 schools he played in college.
Oh, for
right?
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So give him time to develop, right? He's kind of, you know, kind of Tony Romo-esque from that standpoint, right? Undrafted, the whole 9 yards. The Giants are going to have a tough decision to make here in terms of the 1st round. However, they have 2 second round picks, I believe.
Yep.
Right? You can get a guy in the 2nd round too. I think fans place way too much on 1st round picks in terms of, you know, they're in the 1st round. What are they going to get? I'll tell you right now, Giants could trade out of the spot they're in right now. I know a team that would trade up for Jaden Daniels in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat.
That happens to be in Las Vegas.
In Las Vegas. They may have had a head coach who was also at Arizona State when Jaden was there.
Yep.
So, so there's some decisions that need to be made. You know, do you get the stud wide receiver out of LSU? Do you take Alt, the big tackle from Notre Dame? If they took Alt, they won't miss on him.
No.
All right. He's going to be a real good player for a long time. So, so we'll see where he ends up going. But again, there's a lot of things you need more of, right? And so, but I think, you know, building in the trenches there, both on the offensive line, defensive line, I think you got some players at the skill positions now. Robinson came back from his ACL. He'll be even better next year. Started to flash, make some plays. I think Hyatt is going to be a terrific receiver for the Giants for a long time. And I think he's a guy that can take the top off of defense. You saw him do it at Tennessee. Just not sure you had the quarterbacks to get him the ball this year, the way you wanted to get it to him. So Brian's got a lot to work with, but you got to hit on these draft picks now. And you got to, you know, replenish where you can. I think the Giants right now, before they get rid of some players, they have like over 35 million in cap space, something like that. And that could increase to over 50 million. It's a lot of money to spend, you know? So, I don't think it takes a lot to go from the outhouse to the penthouse in the NFL, right? I mean, I see the Giants making the moves and getting right back into the playoffs next year. And, you know, you look around their division, Commanders, who knows what you're going to get next year, right? Eagles, I got to say, once that team stalled, it was all downhill. And players starting to question each other and losing confidence, you know, poor coordinators, the whole 9 yards. And then their head coach, I'm listening to his press conference after the year. We need to bring in some We need to bring in some new coaches to give us some new ideas. And when I heard that, I'm like, I don't think Belichick's ever said that. I don't think Parcells said that. I don't think Lombardi's ever said that. You know, I don't think many great head coaches have ever talked about the ideas that people are going to bring into their building. Why? Because they're the head coaches, right? So I don't know what's going to go on in Philadelphia. We'll see what happens there. And then there's the Cowboys. You know, that's got to be tough for the Cowboys, that you have a wonderful season and all that, and then you get your butts kicked at home in the first playoff game.
When you haven't lost a home game since the first game of 2022.
That's a tough thing. You know, John, I talk about this a lot. Everybody gets into analytics. You know, when it comes to the psychology of the game, you're not going to find it in analytics, right? The things you need to do in the game, from a psychological standpoint, things like momentum, you're not going to find it in analytics, you know? So there's a human aspect to this that will never be found in analytics. So run all the numbers you want. But then there's a common sense factor too, that people like Dan Campbell need to figure out, right? Niners come out, open up third quarter, drive, kick a field goal, right? Feeling good about themselves. And then you drive. Now you can negate those 3 points by kicking a field goal. So what do? Nah, let's go for it on fourth down. Oh, okay. You just juiced up the Niners and added to their momentum, and then they proceeded to beat you and go to the Super Bowl. So good luck with the analytics. Sometimes you just got to use your head a little bit. So.
All right, final 2 questions, Steve, before we say goodbye. You've mentioned you're a big Raider fan. Antonio Pierce, love AP. I did shows with him at the Giants for years. We're friends. I was really excited to see him get the job. As a Raider fan, is that what you wanted to happen as well? Were you happy with it?
Yeah, it's funny. I went out to Vegas to see Raiders Jets. My friends talked me into it, right? 2 Raider fans, 2 Jet fans. So, and I really enjoyed it. When I watched that game, I looked and I'm watching and I'm saying, yeah, he's not ready to be the head coach. But then you give him 5+ games to learn how to be a head coach, what to do, situational football, right? The clock, things like that. He got better and better and better every week. Highlighted by them going into Kansas City and beating the Chiefs at Arrowhead.
Like Andy Reid gave the Raiders credit after the game. He said, look, that shellacking kind of woke us up a little bit. He said he texted AP during the week and he said, thanks for kicking our butt. It kind of got us to where we are.
Well, they literally did, because, you know, Zamir White ran for 150 yards in the game, and he's the backup running back.
Yeah.
Josh Jacobs was out. So, you know, I kind of thought the Niners would take that game plan a little bit, but for some reason they didn't. You know, Christian ended up running the ball 22 times, but it wasn't what they needed to do. Anyway, I digress. We're going to give him a chance. I'm glad, because if the 2 best players on your team absolutely love the coach and ready to run through a wall for this guy, and this guy came in and he beat Kansas City and Arrowhead, why not let him develop? I mean, I didn't want John Gruden coming back as the Raider coach. All right. So, you know, I was having this conversation with a friend. Who's really proven that you're going to go bring in, you know, this defensive coordinator, this offensive coordinator, this one-time head coach, and getting another chance? Who's proven that you're going to bring in? You know, the flavor of the week used to be the hot flash college coaches. And then we saw these guys come in and fall flat on their faces and all that. But if you get a guy that comes in and he proves himself over the course of the time he's out there doing the job, let him keep going. I like that, you know, Telesco, they brought in as a general manager. And why do I like Telesco? Because with the Chargers, he always drafted the players I wanted the Raiders to draft. Okay. So Raiders don't draft linebackers. Telesco drafts linebackers. Great. So we'll let him work a little bit. You know, I wanted Derwin James so badly. and the Raiders didn't take him. The Chargers did. Unfortunately for the Chargers, they had a head coach who didn't know how to use him. That guy should be used like Troy Polamalu, up around the line of scrimmage, not 20 yards back playing zone. So we'll see what happens, but I'm very excited as a Raider fan. We also need a quarterback. Our developmental guy started most of the season, Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah.
Let's see where he develops. Let's see what he becomes. But I also want to have a guy that's a bit mobile, a guy that can create. I was previewing the game the other day. I said, look, here's the thing about Patrick Mahomes. And I say this as a Raider fan, watching Max Crosby going against him twice a year. You're rarely going to get him at the first attempt. It's your second time trying to get him that you're going to get him, So that's the big key. You got to have quarterbacks who can give themselves enough time to elude that first wave of pass rush.
Yeah.
Try to get the ball off. And I'm not saying everybody's going to be a Patrick Mahomes, but that was the thing about Brady. He had great pocket presence, great feel, knew how to slide, knew how to climb a pocket, create time for himself. It's something every quarterback has to learn.
All right, final question, Steve. Offseason is now coming fast and furious. What are your top couple of stories that you're keeping an eye on this offseason that will help mold what the NFL looks like in 2024?
Well, it's going to be interesting with all the new hires around the league. Now you got Jim Harbaugh going to San Diego, and Giants lost their tight ends coach to Jim. He went out there, and I really think they're going to take Brock Bowers in the first round, who I think will be an all-world tight end for them, and make my life as a Raider fan miserable. Like tight ends that preceded him, and Gates and all that. But so that bears watching. That's the thing about Antonio Pierce now. He's going to face basically 3 Hall of Fame type coaches in Peyton Reed and Harbaugh,
Not to mention Mahomes and Herbert. It isn't exactly the best division to be in long term.
No. And believe me, I think the Broncos are going to find themselves a nice quarterback in the draft.
I agree.
So, but those are the things I'm looking forward to. It's going to be weird seeing New England without Belichick. It's going to be weird without seeing Pete Carroll on the sideline for the Seattle Seahawks, who's that's a team that can be really good if they add some pieces. They can be really good. I want to see the Packers next year. They got me excited. They have a quarterback in Jordan Love, right? Again, fans, look at that. The patience. You wait for a guy to grow. Give him a chance, okay? Old guys like me, all of the quarterbacks we loved didn't play as rookies. We watched them grow, And so I think that's going to be fun. But John, there are a lot of teams that are not very far off. What's Mike McDaniel going to learn as the Dolphins head coach? Brilliant guy, right? But there's some things he's got to learn to take his team to the next level. And it's a shame what happened to them because they just couldn't stay healthy on defense and made a lot of great moves. So that's a question that'll be probably take me an hour to answer as I go around the league. But I'm interested to see where's Justin Fields going to be next year. Who's going to spend a second-round pick to trade for Justin Fields? Right? Don't think it'll be the Raiders. And then, there are some guys we may have forgotten about. Cowboys need to make some decisions on their 2 backup quarterbacks. Who are they going to pay? Who are they going to keep? I think Cooper Rush can play. And the kid from North Dakota State.
Jay Lance, yeah.
Well, listen, nobody's really panned out from that draft in terms of being a quarterback, including Trevor Lawrence. All right.
Trevor Lawrence is still waiting for that step. We thought it was going to come after the big comeback win in the playoffs, right? But then it never did this year.
No, he was not good. He was average at best.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But there's a lot to look forward to, and looking forward to the draft and the combine. So it's exciting, John.
Yeah, we'll be leaving for Indy in a couple of weeks. I always love going out there every year. Tell the folks, Steve, anything you want to let them know about that you're doing or you're up to, anything you want to promote, the Floor is yours. Take it away.
Yeah, there's not much. I mean, I'm, basically started my own company and I'm talking to a couple of different companies now about going in and working for them. And so, yeah, it's not like the olden days where I'd promote my injury service or promote SiriusXM. I'm leaving SiriusXM at the end of this month. It's been a wonderful 20 years. We've created some great things. And, now I'm looking to have some fun, for the rest of my career here. And some exciting things that I'm looking at and hoping to put my stamp on. And yeah, it's all good. And I miss a lot of my friends in the Giants organization. I keep in touch with a lot of them. And then a lot of those guys spread out around the country. And I'd see them at the, I saw Avis Roper at the Super Bowl. I saw Kevin Cooper at the Super Bowl. And it's always great to see my friends from the Giants. And yeah, hopefully I'll come out to camp this year.
Yeah, we'd love to have you, Steve. This was really fun. I'm happy we had a chance to do it. Good luck with it, with whatever comes next for you, and let's talk soon.
Thanks, John. It's good to see you. Congratulations on all your success and keep up the great work.
Well, thank you, Steve. I really appreciate that. That's the Giants Huddle podcast presented by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. For Steve Cohen, I'm John Schmeelk. We'll see you next time, everybody.